way we're tracking it. Cowboys continuing to make smaller moves, and our next guest will help us discuss where they are, where they're headed. David Helman, NFL on Fox, joining us now on The Fan. And a good afternoon, sir. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great, guys. It's good to be on with you. How's it going?
It's okay. You know how it goes here is, I feel like we've been doing this for a decade now. I think Greg Hardy was the last signing of an outside team of any significance, and that was still a pretty small one. But what do you make of this approach, David? Is there any way, like playing devil's advocate, maybe they're kind of getting it right by plucking off some of these bargain free agents in the $5 to $6 million range?
I don't feel particularly inclined to play devil's advocate for something that, you're right, we've seen play out for a decade now. I mean, the names change, the strategy remains the same. Like, on the surface, it's all defensible, plugging up your depth chart, signing guys who can play a role for you, but like you're hoping that your drafted players are better than them. Like that's what the Cowboys do, is they sign free agents that can play a role, but the hope is that their homegrown guys are, take those jobs and are the better guys that you can rely on. Why is it our responsibility to be excited about that or defend it after a decade of this strategy producing, at best, disappointing results? Maybe not outright bad. I mean, the Cowboys have made some free agent signings that truly worked out in this period, to be fair to them. But the end result is not anything that is overly exciting, and I'm not going to put my name on trying to sell that hope. Because you're right. Greg Hardy, which I'm glad you said that, Gavin. Like, I mean, people bring up Greg Hardy as the last big signing, but even that was, I don't remember the details of it off the top of my head, but it was like a $6.5 million signing that had incentive bonuses per week and with sack milestones built in. So even the big money was all contingent on how he produced, obviously because he was radioactive because nobody else in the league wanted him. So even giving the Cowboys credit for that is a bit of a reach, in my opinion. It's been more than a decade, I would say. It's probably been Brandon Carr since they were really willing to do anything in free agency that is worth really having a deep conversation about.
It's crazy is the Cowboys are maybe one of only a few teams in the entire world that even as all this is going on, they're still getting the best ratings in the league. Like, what is their impetus for this to change? How do we get there? Because it's sad to observe it, knowing that there's still millions and millions of people that are going to anxiously tune in every Sunday and keep this business plan rolling just fine for the Jones boys.
You know what? And it's a weird spot to live. And I feel like people try to pin you into one or two camps during this time of year where, like, I would be equally offended if the Cowboys were one of these sorry teams that was out spending $300 million in free agency. And they have a point when they say that the worst teams are the ones that typically have to resort to that. But God, I'm such a broken record. I've been saying this, going all the way back to when I worked there. I've been saying it for a long time. You got to find some kind of middle ground between doing too much and electing to do nothing at all. When will it change the way people perceive the team? I think it's a phenomenal question, and obviously they are still such a popular team. I work for Fox now. I can tell you how valuable the Cowboys name is to a company like Fox, even after the Green Bay game, even after all of the last 10 years, it's still such a valuable property. And I spend a lot of time wondering, like, inside the Cowboys conference rooms, when they look at their data and trends and all that type of stuff, how many years are we out from them being worried about losing their grip on that? You could convince me it's soon. You could also convince me that it could go on for another 30 years like this before something changed drastically. I don't completely know the answer, and I often wonder, how they feel about it and how concerned they are behind closed doors. Or maybe they aren't at all. Who knows?
Dave, of the deals that happened yesterday, I know you were firing off some spicy tweets, but I think the one that annoyed me the most was Dre Greenlaw. 3 years, 35 mil, 27 years old, in the prime of his career. Looked like he was pretty healthy in the 2 games that he played last year off the injury. I'm like, could the Cowboys not have gotten in on this one? Linebacker's a pretty big need. Were there any other ones that stood out to you like, I would like the Cowboys to be in on this?
Yeah, and that goes back to my point, and it's a good one. Again, I don't want you to go give Dan Moore $80 million over 4 years. I think that's insane. But Robert Spillane, phenomenal run and hit linebacker from the Raiders. He's a Patriot now. I think it was 3 years, $37 million. Greenlaw got something similar. I mean, these are really good linebackers. Greenlaw, I know he had the injury, but Greenlaw is one of the, the heartbeats of that San Francisco team that's taken it to Dallas so many times over the last 5 or 6 years. When you get a guy like that for money that's not even top 5 at the position, what's the defense for not being willing to do that? Another name that jumped out to me, and again, like, these aren't crazy splashy signings. Pat Jones is a phenomenal rotational piece for the Minnesota Vikings. He was a big piece of the number 1 defense in the league last year. He got 2 years, $20 million. Leonard Floyd just signed, he was just cut by the Niners, immediately picked up by Atlanta for 1 year, $10 million. I bet you that's not all completely guaranteed. So that's an edge rusher that you could probably have a lot of fun with on the opposite side of Micah Parsons if DeMarcus Lawrence isn't going to come back, and you're not breaking the bank to get a guy like that. There's stuff like that all over the league if you're willing to look. Nobody wants the Cowboys to be fishing at the top of the market, but the complete cowardice to spend any sort of competitive money defies explanation at this point.
It's David Helman, NFL on Fox, here with you on The Fan. When we look at really who gets the blame for being, so impotent around free agency, this really comes back to Stephen Jones, doesn't it? And the more in control of this he has become as Jerry has gotten older, the more conservative the team has become.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's the popular thing to say. I struggle to definitively lay things on somebody's feet when I'm not privy to it. I'd say it's fair to say Steven has more day-to-day say-so than he did a decade ago, but you absolutely know Jerry is a prideful enough man that he's not going to let too many important things happen without him having some sort of say-so. You throw Will McClay into the mix, obviously he's climbed ever higher in that organization. He gets a title change and a raise every so often, and well-deserved, by the way, but the more established he becomes, you would imagine he has a louder voice, especially when you bring in a new head coach like Brian Schottenheimer. You would imagine you want a first-time head coach leaning on a guy like Will McClay, maybe more than a Mike McCarthy did. So I know Steven takes a lot of crap for that. I'm sure some of it is deserved, but I hesitate to lay it all at one guy when you're talking about the Cowboys' power structure is very unique when you're talking about 2 Joneses, Will McClay as well, and then throw in a head coach. I mean, I think there's a lot of voices there to be trying to assign everything to one person.
Dave, after having lived and worked in that building there with DallasCowboys.com, to now you're a couple of years West Coast, you're with Fox Sports, has your perception or thinking towards the Cowboys changed at all?
I don't think so, really. And it's funny. I bring this anecdote up all the time, but I think the perception I've been working off of for a while. I know a lot of people point to the Packer loss a couple seasons ago, but really, I remember my last full season with the team was 21. And they lost that wild card game at home to San Francisco. And the Niners were obviously a good team. They got to the NFC title game that year. And a lot of people heading into that game thought they might beat Dallas. It's not like it was this crazy upset that nobody predicted. But I just remember thinking, that was the year Trayvon Diggs had all the picks and Micah burst onto the scene and Dak was phenomenal. And they still, CD and Amari Cooper were both balling, and they just got their asses kicked in their first playoff game. And I just remember thinking, man, I don't know what it's going to take, but this ain't it. and they've continued to not really try to pivot too much from their philosophy in the time since. So it's been a good 4 or 5 years at this point where I've been pretty disillusioned with the way the Cowboys do things. And honestly, I felt that way before I got a ton of distance on the team. So I would actually say it hasn't changed all that much, really.
Which position group has you most concerned right now, Dave?
In light of there's a few. I would say I'm pretty nervous about receiver behind CD. I know they re-signed Terp, but I think you got to do more to fill out that depth chart. But in light of the Jordan Lewis news, and I know they're not playing a game this weekend. I know they got all the time in the world to fix it, but when you consider Trayvon Diggs, we'll see what his availability looks like. Jordan Lewis is out the door. That cornerback depth chart starts to look awfully thin, and you remember what it looked like at times last year with having to pull guys off the practice squad. That's a rough world to live in, and cornerback is kind of one of those positions where if you don't have somebody by the time the draft's over with, you might be in deep trouble. So if I had to answer it today, I'd probably say cornerback.
Dave, is there any positions in the draft that you would double dip if you're the Cowboys?
And unfortunately, in my current job, I'm not as dialed in on the draft as I was when we were doing our thing together. I think the easy answer is I just know how loaded the running back position is. Sure. And even with Javonte Walker signing on, which I actually, to give him some credit, I like that signing. It's not bad money. He's been productive when he's healthy. He can do a variety of things for you, but I'm still trying to fill out that depth chart in the draft. I mean, I would like the Cowboys to spend one of their first 3 picks on a running back. And then if you want to go back on day 3, I think it was in 2019, they double dipped with Tony Pollard and Mike Weber. I'd love to see something similar where you take a 2nd or 3rd round pick and pair them with a 6th or 7th round pick, whatever it is. And then, those 2 guys plus Javonte Walker, I think I'd feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. I think, when you mentioned the cornerback spot is another one I think I would look at. It just seems like to be a lot of depth at the, and I think that's one of those things where you're going to wake up one day and you're going to go, wow, they just don't have anybody. I mean, they don't have anybody. They have Bland and really, what else is the situation there?
Let me ask you this, Draft Man. Mm-hmm. Is there a corner that you would be excited or happy to see them take at 12?
Yeah, I would, and I don't think they would do it, Dave. I don't think they would. I think that they're more interested in Will Johnson from Michigan because of his length but I think Barron from Texas, it fits. I think Barron is, they're not going to like his measurables. They're not, but you watch the film of the way that he plays. I mean, he can cover, he can play inside, he can play outside. They're going to like Will Johnson, and I'm not going to get a 40-yard dash on Will Johnson. I might not at all get a 40-yard dash on him because he's hurt his hamstring again. So he's not going to run. Supposedly there's a pro day on April 14th. And I could see, I'm not really right yet. I really don't want to run, that kind of thing. And that carries that thing all. But they are likely not going to like Barron because of the measurables on him. And if you watch the tape, he's every bit of a first-round player that you should draft.
I'm interested in that and so that kind of lines up with my thought is maybe there's a guy that you like, but this doesn't feel like a draft where you're hoping and praying that a cornerback is there for you like a couple years ago when you had J.C. Horn and Pat Surtain. Right. Ironically, they wound up getting Micah out of it, which is great, but this would be a great year. If a cornerback that they loved was there at 12, I don't think that screams obvious to a lot of fans, but I would be thrilled with that decision because of you got to admit you're nervous about Diggs' long term right now.
Yeah.
Bland, he's going to be in a contract negotiation before you know it. We'll see how that goes. If it were doable, if there were a guy worth taking there, I think that would be a great idea.
Reville might be one of the best cornerbacks, depending on where you put Hunter from Colorado. If you like him at corner or receiver. But, Reville is awesome, but he's coming off a knee injury. at East Carolina.
Sounds like a Blue Star special to me.
But
the ECU kid. Yeah.
I mean, but see, that's what I'm saying. Ravel Morrison from Notre Dame, the hip surgeries and stuff like that. I mean, these are really, really, really good players. But there's some questions at the top. I think the only questions you have about Barron is like you don't like the arm length or you don't like the size or what. Me personally, I don't know how you. The guy's a hell of a player.
If I could wave a magic wand and have the Cowboys come out of the first round with a badass at whatever position, receiver and corner would be pretty high on my list. I think those would be. I'd reverse it though. I think it would be corner and receiver. But yeah.
David Helman, NFL on Fox. Thank you so much, dude. Enjoy the rest of the spring. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, fellas. Love y'all.